As you know, the winning will continue until morale improves. Our team is simply dominant, and we're only getting better. The only question now is whether we can keep the winning streak alive. Alright guys, well welcome back. We're just going to go ahead and jump straight on into this. We'll do a more creative opening I think tomorrow. Yeah, this is one of those days. If it sounds like I just woke up, it's because I pretty much did just wake up. We're having strange weather out here where it can be really warm. It was really warm yesterday and then it got back to really cold. We're supposed to have more winter weather sometime soon. So anyway, it's one of those real kind of headache type situations. Let's go play against the Black Sox and see if we can win a couple of games and beat the Ninjas. And she beats it out. How about that? So good job by Lucy, and let's go ahead and get this thing going. So you've got me here in one of these sort of odd days here for the channel, for all of the projects and all of that stuff. I woke up this morning and then the first thing I did is spend a whole bunch of time drafting a bunch of blog posts for the Baseball Replay Journal blog. So I've got 2 of those coming up, trying to get myself back to the point where I'm a little bit ahead. The truth is that I'm way behind on stuff. I've got, I think, 3 of these sort of long-form scripted videos that I want to make sometime, hopefully today, tomorrow, that sort of thing. And the reason why is because, as you may or may not know, I've just spent the entire, boy, we just lined into triple play, so much for that. I've spent the entire weekend driving. This is the problem, right? This is the problem. I end up driving around with the kids, trying to get stuff done because my wife is not here. I was gone for about 6 hours yesterday, just doing stupid stuff. So that makes it very difficult to get anything accomplished. Anyway, so there's my lament. I know that ideally I should set this up so that I'm not actually doing this work on the weekend. It's going to take us a while to get to that point. So this is kind of the world that we have right now. It's going to be a little bit of a scramble here. My big challenge for myself has always been trying to get it so that I have scripted long-form videos coming out on a regular basis on all of my channels, all my projects and stuff. And I should be able to do that here. It's just going to be kind of a push here today and tomorrow to make sure that we get this stuff done. So hence the reason why I'm looking at this now. I haven't gone to the gym yet, and I'm thinking I just need to get this done right now. The other problem is I have to take the car in today for a service. So and my wife comes back tomorrow morning. It's going to be a little bit easier once she's back and I'm not doing every chore myself. I need to clean up the house too, which is another problem. So anyway, there's my morning lament for you. Life just has this way of kind of throwing all sorts of stupid things at you when you don't really want to do any of them. And speaking of stupid things going on, I'm a little bit perturbed that we lined into that triple play. It would have been nice if that were a base hit. We could get some offense going here, because we've had absolutely nothing from the bottom of the order. So let's see what we can do. The Shermie's doing a little bit better now since we did upgrade his defense a little bit, and it makes a difference. So a lot of those balls would have gotten past him earlier, but once the defense is upgraded, he can actually play where he's supposed to play. I don't know why it's important for the pitcher there to go over to cover third base. Maybe someone can explain that to me. Anyway, so all of the lamenting aside, the good news is that it's March, and that means that we're done with January and February. If you're kind of new to the YouTube scene, you might notice if you watch YouTubers that people don't usually publish stuff in January and February. This is in part because AdSense payments are low, and it's also in part because people don't watch the platform as much in those months because you're just out of the holidays and you have other stuff going on or whatever. So my hope is that things will open up a little bit here in March moving forward, and that we'll have a pretty strong summer coming up. Of course, first thing we need to do is we need to score some runs here. I think that's going to be a single. No, she's not quite fast enough. She's only a step too slow for that. And not quite. Alright, so anyway, the big focus I've had this morning has been on the long and... boy, that was embarrassing. On the long and mostly unknown history of minor league baseball. So thank you to the person in the comments who pointed out that the Branch Rickey Kennesaw Mountain Landis sort of argument was in 1937. I found that there's a blog post coming out tomorrow with a lot of original newspaper coverage of that. Yeah, that's one of those classic ones where you swing and it's called a ball. A little bit of a trick for you. So, as I think I mentioned, I think it was in yesterday's video when I was talking about that, I knew about this from reading the Bill James Historical Baseball Abstract, you know, from cover to cover several times when I was a teenager. He talks about it in a section on the 1930s, but it turns out that James not only does not cite any sources, thank you, Bill, but he actually got the year wrong. He claimed it was in 1937, and this was what was driving me nuts. I was looking up and down through newspapers in 37 and couldn't find it. Well, it's because it happened in 38. So the story behind this is that Kennesaw Mountain Landis declared something like 90 different St. Louis Cardinals farmhands to be free agents. There we go. Now we got a 5-0 lead. Now you're probably wondering why Landis did that. He did this because it turned out that Branch Rickey and the Cardinals owned, in some cases, 2 different teams in the same league. This was part of this farm system that he had set up. Now, the legality of the farm system itself is kind of in question. I'm not sure that anybody's ever really done like an actual study on this, right? So basically, the way that this had worked traditionally in baseball is that minor league teams were independent, and the major league teams would concern themselves with ownership over individual players. So, for example, let's say you got, I don't know, you got some guy who looks like he might be a good player for you in the future, you want to get him under contract, but you don't have room on your major league roster, so what you do is you have him play as a loanee, like a player that's loaned out to a certain minor league team, and so you say, okay, well, the major league team will cover this guy's contract for you, but we want him to play, and so on and so forth. That's the way that baseball used to operate. If you go and you read the Norman Mack books about Connie Mack, you know, the early years of baseball and stuff, he describes this system actually really well. It's very, very similar to what happens in the world of soccer in Europe, which is very, very similar. They have this loan system. So if you're, I don't know, like Chelsea in England, and you have a whole bunch of young players on your roster, but you can't register them all because of registration rules, what you do is you find other teams to loan them out to. And so what happens then is you still own the player, you still control the player, but the player has the ability to play maybe at a lower level and get a little bit more experience for you. Now, what happens these days often in Europe is the players will be loaned out for a fee or for the promise to pay a certain amount of the contract and stuff like that. In the old days in baseball, I think sometimes that would happen, but it wasn't quite as common as it is these days in soccer. But at any rate, basically the minor league system, the farm system, was like an extension of this, except it went to the point where the big league club would essentially own the minor league team. Now, whether this was like legitimate, legal or not itself is kind of a question. I don't know the answer to that question, exactly how this practice started. Where it turned into a farm, though, is when you own maybe more than one team, you start owning like a string of teams, and then you're moving players left and right from one team to the next. All right, and that's sort of the practice that we've seen to this day, and that's the thing that in my mind is really objectionable. Why is it an objectionable practice, right? Well, the problem that you have is that you've completely destroyed all minor league baseball pennant races, right? The entire minor league structure is about nothing more than player development. Anyway, I've had videos before where I've ranted a little bit about this, and I'll probably keep ranting about this until the end of time, largely because I grew up in Salt Lake City. I grew up in a minor league town. The problem with having that type of minor league baseball structure is that there's no reason for fans in minor league cities to pay any attention to the local team. The reason why is because, you know, your favorite star player today is likely going to end up with the big league team tomorrow, and like, it becomes really, really difficult to pay any sort of attention or to care at all about the local team, right? Because it's not really your local team. There's no continuity, right? The roster will change from year to year and so on and so forth. So to put this in more modern terms, you can think about it as sort of college football, right? With the NIL and all this stuff, everybody's looking at it as a headache. Imagine a college football world where you start having major teams that own huge numbers of players or have contracts with huge numbers of players, and start taking their excess players and basically like giving them away to other teams, but they still have control over them, right? This is something that may actually happen in college football because of the disparity in terms of like money that teams are bringing in, and because like there are no rules that govern, you know, the way that the sport currently operates, right? I mean, the problem with this is that if this were to happen today in college football, you would end up with teams that nobody would want to watch because they're just feeder teams for other teams that are more popular. That's exactly what happened in minor league baseball. And so you can look through the history of the minor leagues and you can see great teams of the past that did exist, including some teams that existed during that were farm teams. For example, the New York Bears in, I think, 1936 had a great team. The Los Angeles Angels in 1934 had a great team, right? But the problem with these teams is that they're really just farm teams of other major league teams. At some point in time, you're like, well, was this really a great team though, right? How many of these guys actually did something in the major leagues, right? Maybe they just got lucky and didn't have really good competition, right? It becomes very, very difficult to figure this sort of thing out because the leagues themselves are not really like baseball leagues. Instead, they're sort of feeder organizations for major league teams, right? I've noticed this before, or noted this before in earlier videos. Basically what it is it's sort of baseball's version of European imperialism, like, you know, before World War I, right? What it is you have an outpost in this city and in that city, and the whole purpose of the team is to create talent for the major league team. They don't care if the team finishes first or last or anything like that. All that they care about is that you have a place for these players to play. That's the first base hit we've given up today. Anyway, so when you look at it that way, I think it's somewhat understandable why I look at the system and I say this is a really dumb system and it's a really good way to get people uninterested in your sport. I'm surprised you didn't say it was safe. Usually it says that if there's less than 2 outs. Yeah, that's speed by the Ninja Black Sox. Alright, so we have to keep trying here to win this game. Not gonna be as easy as we thought, unfortunately. Peppermint Patty needs to come out, but I'll give her a little bit more of a chance. Alright, there we go. Anyway, there you go. So there's the current state of the minor league baseball rant. I've always had a lot of admiration for Jack Dunn, even though he's really the reason why players like Lefty Grove didn't enter the major leagues until much later. Grove was 25 when he was finally purchased by Connie Mack, which meant that I mean, he probably could have played in the major leagues at age 19. So that means that, you know, Lefty Grove, as great as he was probably a better player than his major league statistics show, because everybody ignores what he did in the minor leagues for the Baltimore Orioles, right? Now, there is an argument that maybe he was great because he had time to, you know, work things out in the minors and all this stuff, but it's just a really, really difficult argument to make. It's a difficult argument to make because the minor leagues in the 1920s were not like the minor leagues are today, and people tend to forget that, including people who are baseball historians who should know better. So anyway, it's an interesting and it's a pretty frustrating thing sometimes to talk about. There we go. So for a couple of years now, we've had kind of a focus on creating different major league equivalency ratings, and you know about all this. If you follow baseball sabermetrics and advanced analysis and stuff, you get stuff like, you know, Dan Szymborski's ZiPS and stuff like that, which is well designed, but there are a lot of sort of assumptions that go into this that are questionable if you're looking at seasons of the past, right? These days, you more or less do have a pipeline to the major leagues, and you can say that, you know, the talent level actually is different at different stops along the way. But if you're looking backwards and you're looking at, we need to get her out, don't we? This is a shame. I kind of wanted to pinch hit for her, but we're not going to let that happen. So if you're looking back at like the 1934 Los Angeles Angels, for example, it's very, very difficult for you to say what this team would have done in terms of major league equivalency. And the reason why it's difficult is because like a lot of the players of the 1934 Pacific Coast League either never played in the major leagues or they played like for half a season, or in some cases for like a couple games, right? So, you know, if you look at the league leaders in hitting that year, right? Joe DiMaggio played for San Francisco and hit 341, despite the fact that he injured his knee halfway through, like in August or something like that, right? There you go. So, you know, DiMaggio, of course, is unquestionably a great player, but he didn't even come close to leading the league in batting. In fact, the interesting thing about the 1934 Pacific Coast League season is that they ended up splitting the season into half because the Los Angeles Angels were so far ahead by what, June like 20th or something like that, that they figured that they had to do so to keep fans interested in the league. The Angels ended up dominating both the first and second half of the league, and so their end of season series ended up being the Angels playing against a team of all-stars from the other other teams, and the Angels dominated anyway. So, you know, it's really hard to look at that and to say, well, you know, if you want to figure out the major league equivalency, you have to use this formula and that formula. I mean, you have one team that was like huge level above every other team in the league. But when you look at the 1934 Los Angeles Angels, you see a bunch of players that, for the most part, never played in the major leagues, or if they did play, they played very, very briefly. So it becomes kind of a real difficult thing to go through and figure all this stuff out. Especially if you're doing it sort of after the fact. Anyway, my biggest desire is that at some point in time people are going to actually do research into the Pacific Coast League and into some of these other old minor leagues. There we go. Now we have the 10-run league. The reason why I say that, like, there are books out there that talk about this stuff, but most of the older books that were published, there was a guy who published a whole bunch of these like about 20 years ago or so. Most of these books are just sort of like compilations of statistics. Right? I'm talking about like a real book or a real study, right? So I have access to, you know, dozens upon dozens of newspapers from teams that played in these leagues, right? There are things like stories about different games. There's, you know, the drama of the game and all of that stuff. A lot of that stuff has been lost, right? And oftentimes in baseball analysis, people look at something and say, well, we have the box score, we have the stats, or whatever, that's all we need. And this is not true. Anyway. Maybe one day I'll be able to come up with some sort of, we should have put Marcy in, it's alright. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to come up with some sort of like answer to this or some sort of project or something to try to help this along. One of the things I've always wanted to do is dive deep into the Baltimore Orioles of the like late 19-teens and early 1920s, but it's very, very difficult to do. So when it comes to Major League Baseball, it's easy. I can look over on Baseball Reference. I can see what the final standings were. I can see, you know, game-by-game information about teams. I can find like the exciting games and stuff like that. But if you're looking at the Pacific Coast League or the American Association or the International League or something like that, you can't do this. There's no resource out there that gives you any of that information. And it's kind of hard to compile all of this if you don't have something to rely on, right? You can go day by day in a newspaper, but you know, it takes a lot of time and a huge amount of effort to do that. Anyway, we had 4 home runs. Pigpens hit 20. We won 13-2. Let's play another one. Look at that cash money, right? Alright, so we've got to make sure these other teams are playing their other games first. I don't know why they're all showing up as needing to play the World Powers. Anyway, I've done this not correctly, but whatever. It'll all come out in the end. It'll all come out in the wash. Actually, I think that scheduling screen has some sort of bug in it, honestly, but whatever. We'll figure it out. Alright, so there you go. That's the thing that's been on my mind. That's not just something that's been on my mind today. The history of minor league baseball. Ever since I started this, the Baseball Replay Journal blog, I've been thinking about this stuff. And there are people who do some research into this. For example, Skeetersoft came out with a version of the 1906 Pacific Coast League. You used to be able to buy, I think you still can buy the electronic copy because Bill's not selling cards anymore. And he made a big deal out of how nobody had really researched this before and looked into it. So as you know, the 1906 Pacific Coast League was brought to an abrupt halt because there was a major earthquake in San Francisco, which happens to be where the league office was. And so as a result, a lot of the statistics, the records and stuff were kind of destroyed. But of course, the funny thing is you can actually recreate them as long as you have access to original newspapers, which we have today. And I think that's where a lot of the research came through. I forgot, this team has really good fielding, so we have to be careful. Well, that'll do it. No luck for us so far today. Anyway, minor league baseball, especially sort of before the 1920s, is absolutely fascinating because then you're looking at a period in which more or less most of the minor league teams were actually independent, as opposed to being just simply farm teams for major league clubs. It's not 100% true though, right? There are teams back then that had very, very close relationships with major league clubs. As I said before, there are teams that, or are players that that were under contract by major league clubs that were kind of shipped out to the minors. Oh, almost got him. Hey, you got him that swing and a miss, and it didn't even drop. So how about that? Now, the other thing that's really interesting to research is the Federal League. So, you know, the Federal League was a major league in 1914 and 1915. What you probably didn't know is that the Federal League also had a 1913 season. It was a much smaller league. I think it was only a 16 league that year, but that's kind of how it started up. The other thing that's interesting is that that whole distinction between what is a major and what is a minor league was largely done out of sort of agreement between the major and minor leagues, which is an agreement that fell apart in the winter of 1918 to 1919. The minor leagues decided briefly not to sign it. They did sign it, the agreement though in 1920, though there were certain leagues, most notably the International League, that were upset about this. Now, the reason why they were upset is because this agreement basically allowed major league teams to draft minor league players at the end of the season for a set amount of money with a couple of stipulations. I don't know the exact nature of the agreement. But, the whole agreement was designed to make it so that major league teams could get players that were really good without paying market prices. That's basically what it was. And, of course, the easiest way to do that, boy, we're in trouble now. The easiest way to make sure you can get players for less than market value is to just own the entire team that you're buying from. Yeah, that's the thing. It's a very, very sort of American form of doing business, right? Where you have some major company that ends up controlling everything, and everything else slowly becomes a subsidiary of the major company. That's the history of baseball. It's the history of baseball people don't talk much about. And as I've said, it kind of is a shame. I do think the sport would end up doing much better among people if it was more of a local sport. And it's funny because we talk so much about baseball being a very regional sport at the major league level, but at the minor league level, it's not. It's not at all. In fact, at the minor league level, it's common for fans of certain major league teams to pay much more attention to the farm system than people who are living in the cities with the farm team. Alright, let's go. Anyway, one of the reasons why I got really into this is because for a little while I would play around with OTP, which is, a lot of you know, has the capability of letting you manage, a complete minor league system. The problem with OTP when it does this is that it's really inaccurate, especially if you're looking at these old seasons from the 1930s and so on. Right? It's not particularly good at recreating the system where you have some teams that are major league affiliates, some teams that are not, and you own a bunch of players that are kind of like sitting around on various minor league teams. It's too much, I think, for the system to really handle. OTP can be very, very frustrating as well because it will have incomplete minor leagues, and so you run into people who don't study the history of the sport very much, who think that, there was only, one minor league in 1916 or something like that, just because most things are missing from OTP. So anyway, it can be frustrating, right? It's a popular game, which I think is a good thing, but there are so many problems with OTP that I'm not sure that the good that we get from it is worth all of the trouble that it causes. Anyway, so there you go. I'm not sure that I'm doing such a good job here today of distracting myself from this game enough to win. We're not playing well at all. I've noticed here that Charlie Brown tends to tire a lot faster, even though he's got full stamina, than Peppermint Patty. I've noticed this a couple of times in a couple of games. I'm not sure what's going on with him and his ratings, but he seems to really, really struggle once we hit the 5th inning. I think if you look back, you'll see that that's been true in every single game that we've played. Alright, there we go. Alright, well his spot will come up in the order, so we'll be able to take him out. Now, the other funny thing, by the way, about independent minor leagues is that if you've been to any independent minor league baseball games, or you know about the leagues or whatever, you know that, I don't know necessarily about the quality of play, but the quality of, like, what the team can put out and stuff is pretty questionable, and it's usually because there's just not a whole lot of money you know, around. So when you talk about this with people who are familiar with independent minors, they're thinking, oh yeah, you know, that's gonna work. The thing that I think people, oh shoot, I can't get back. I forgot about that. Once you hit the next base, you can't move back, which is kind of a bug in this game. There are other games that let you go back. This one doesn't. Anyway, my thesis, at least, about the independent minor leagues is that they probably would be perfectly fine if you didn't have all of the meddling from the farm system. These days, it can't really work, and it never works. The reason why it can't work, unless you do something like the Savannah Bananas do, the reason why it can't work normally is because you can't sell your independent minor league players and make a huge profit. That's the way that the system used to work back in the old days. So the whole idea was that, you know, you barely, you know, make ends meet through attendance because you're playing in like nowhere, Texas or something, right? You have a stadium that seats like 3,000 people or something like that. But the way that you're able to make money is you have players who play well and you're able to sell them, and that's what kind of puts you over out of the red and into the black. But if you are up against major league systems that have numerous minor leagues under their control, you're not going to get any of that money. I mean, it's not going to work. The economics behind it don't work at all. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why I look at the arrangement and find myself having all sorts of frustrations and concerns with sort of the way that it works. Right. I mean, in truth, again, it's basically imperialism, where the major league team has this sort of relationship with the minor league team in which the minor league team's only benefit is that it barely manages to stay alive. And the whole purpose of it is to remove the free market for players so that the major league team can develop guys for basically nothing. And when you combine that with a lot of the shenanigans that go on, especially these days in Major League Baseball, you can see the reason why this stuff becomes very objectionable, right? I'm talking about stuff like, you know, having entire teams at the Major League level that are basically like, you know, a revolving door for, you know, what we call like quadruple A level players, right? This has been happening for years, for decades, right? Where you get poor teams where it's like, they kind of ship some minor leaguers up and give them, you know, a cup of coffee here or there, and then ship them back down regardless of how they played. In part, likely to avoid having to make certain payments to players and having to worry about, you know, players having seniority and all this other stuff that's important to the Players Association. So it's pretty shady. There's a lot of shady practices that go on in this sport. Man, this guy's driving me nuts with these curveballs that look like they're coming right to me and then go over the strike zone right at the last moment. Go, 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 go. Oh, shoot. Yeah, we're gonna lose this game, I'm afraid. This is not looking good. And it's amazing to me that we can't get more base hits off of these guys because this guy is not pitching well. But I mean, even with these slow balls, we're not able to actually slug them. We keep hitting it on the ground. If we're gonna make it happen, we've got a couple of innings to do it, and it's not looking good. Anyway, so there you go. I don't know that any of my long rant here has anything to do with things that are important, like the coming expiration of the collective bargaining agreement and stuff like that. But I do think that it's related. One of the complaints I've always had about the old way of the Players Association and how they would do things is that they would represent only the major league player interests, not the minor league player interests. And so this is how you wound up with a system where minor league players were making far less than minimum wage because salaries hadn't changed at all in decades. And the whole idea was that you're going to starve until you finally get a chance in the major leagues and you start getting something guaranteed. It's just an insane system. Anyway. when you think about the sport as a business, you start realizing that there's a lot of like really crazy shenanigans that have gone on over many, many years, and that those who are in favor of, you know, free enterprise ought to be very, very frustrated with Major League Baseball. All right, there we go. Now we have something going on, right? Let's see if Lucy can get a hit, and let's see if we can get this game turned around. There's no luck. So to everybody who tells me, oh, you're standing too close to the plate, I want to ask you, what was I supposed to do there, right? I hit that ball right off of the sweet spot of the bat, and what happens? I end up getting a pop-up. It's not as easy as you think. All right, let's see if Pigpen can get a home run here. Maybe we can get this turned around, but of course now we got to deal with another pitcher. I wonder, I think that there is something in the game where like the first pitch thrown by a relief pitcher ends up being like extremely fast, because that was unusually fast. But that's part of the problem here, right? Because you're like, well, you've got to, you know, make sure that you're swinging early enough, but at the same time, like the guy has this tendency to throw the ball way out of the strike zone. So, not that easy. But what we could use is some players who can hit the ball forward instead of hitting it foul behind the plate like that. Yeah, we're done. I think that we've lost this game. I know what you're thinking. Oh, well, don't give up on it so soon, but given who we have left in the lineup, I don't think that we have a chance of winning. I do have to wonder if we wouldn't, again, be better off having better luck for these players. I think that's what's going on. I think that's the reason why you're seeing a lot of those balls that normally should be driven end up being pop-ups. All right, let's see what we can do. Linus hasn't been the power hitter that we've needed from him, and there's another pop-up. The other problem that we have, and I know I've talked your ear off about this one, is that we only got $90,000 from that game, right? It's enough to make maybe a couple of improvements, but we can't fix everything we need to fix on this team. So we'll see. It's that endless struggle where you have just not quite enough money, and the big question is, what do we do about, you know, the endless pop-ups? We've had nothing but pop-ups in this game. It's driving me nuts. We can't get around on anything. We can't drive anything. It's pretty bad. So it's going to take a while before we're able to finally, like, totally demolish this team. I thought we played well in the first game, but in this one, it's been just ugly. So there you go. We get 9 hits, no runs, no home runs, nothing. So anyway, you can go ahead and criticize as you want, but the two problems that we have are Charlie Brown is not a particularly good pitcher, and then the other problem that we have is that we're getting way too many pop-ups from like everything in our lineup. So we've got to figure out what to do to solve that. There's the other one. Yeah, I think what happened is I think the World Powers have too many games, right? Because they had 7 so far against the Ninja Black Sox. So anyway, we've got a couple of other things here that we need to fix, but it'll probably take us a little while to get it right. We're only 3 games behind the American Dream, so there is still a chance. But the big question in my mind is, so what do we do? Do we try to improve Charlie Brown, or do we try to improve some of these hitters, right? That 12 speed for Peppermint Patty, I think, is a big part of the difference. That was just a bad outing by him. But the thing that I'm more concerned about is the fact that we can't seem to get any, we can't seem to drive the ball. Now, if we were going to improve Pigpen, we'd be able, like, we have enough money to improve like 1 player, maybe 2. That's the other thing we got to think about. I would like to make Shermie a better hitter because he has been really quiet. But we're getting to the point here where these big hitters are pretty expensive. I mean, even Snoopy is really expensive for us at this point. I think what we're going to do is we're going to power her up. And so yeah, there we go. We get 2 points. That's it. We can do him as well. Alright, there we go. We'll play against the American Dreams tomorrow. We'll see how we do. I always have hope that we'll be able to turn it into 2 games, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Anyway, so yeah, it's going to be a little while before we get this team built up in time to win. And I ask you again, right, can I go back and play the lovely ladies again so that we can get a bunch of money? Because that would make it a lot easier. Anyway, I'll talk with you guys again tomorrow. Take care.